what it is. We're born with what we're born with, right?
Yes.
All right, welcome everybody to Talking Niagara. Few issues this morning. Let's start off with the Canal Bridge closures. We've got illegal rents question and national recall on some drinks. So welcome to Talking Niagara, everybody. Wednesday, 17th of July, 2024, with me, Peter Giblett, and him, Mike Cushman.
Morning, Niagara.
Right, so first of all, let's look at the Canal Bridge closures. We should have done this Monday, right? There's basically, right, Allenburg Bridge is closed Tuesday, Wednesday. That's probably the one that affects us here in Niagara most. So it's closed today. It was closed yesterday. Glendale Avenue Bridge is closed today and tomorrow. And these are basically 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So I'm presuming they'll remain up. In Port Coburn, Main Street and Mellenby Avenue bridges will be closed on Thursday, with Main Street Bridge closed from 9 a.m. till noon and Mellenby closed from noon till 4 p.m. So they're kind of alternating those ones, right? And presuming what they're doing is bridge maintenance.
Yeah, it's really odd at this time of year because usually during the shipping season, they've already got the maintenance done, and for them to be doing it all the way down too, maybe they're adding something or putting something on that hasn't been there. But the timing is really bad right now. Going from St. Catharines to Niagara Falls is horrible. So much construction going on all at once. It's a logjam.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So your alternate routes are taking the bridges, and now the bridges are closed.
It's okay. You got the tunnel, and then the tunnel will be closed.
Yeah, we tried that way when the highway was so slow going back from St. Catharines to Niagara, and then that ended up being closed down because of that lethal accident and everything, right? It took us an hour and a half to go from St. Catharines to Niagara Falls, coming from Hamilton.
It happens. It happens sometimes, right?
Crazy. But when you add these bridges in with all this construction going on, it's chaos.
Yeah. Do you know there's a nice little piece of real estate on some of these bridges? I know they're full of the mechanics of the bridge, but hey, they look like a nice little house to live in.
The penthouse.
Imagine that you're asleep on a Sunday morning, and you feel the whole thing rise up.
Yeah, I wonder. I still wonder how come they're doing it at this time of year, because it's very odd.
Yeah. Normally, all those road closures and that have all done in the 3 months of January, February, March, when the bridges are traditionally closed. So I'm presuming that what will happen here is, let's take the Allenburg Bridge, for example, that it will go up when it's closed, between 9 and 4, and will come back down at 4 p.m. And that what they're doing on it is things like gearing changes or computer software updates, although the latter could be done remotely, or something of that kind of nature, right?
Yeah. And it looks like
otherwise it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, unless they got something new they have to add to each bridge.
That's a possibility. You mean something like an early warning system, or
maybe they were required to add something to each bridge, and now they got to go through the process of it, because it doesn't make sense that they're doing it during the busiest season of the year. So and what an inconvenience.
But you see, I think that the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation would have said something about that in this article, and there's nothing in here. It's pretty devoid of anything like that.
Yeah, they'd be the ones I'd be speaking to find out what's going on and why, but maybe they didn't think that was important. All that was important was to get the news out the bridge is closed down.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you see, people like you and I want to know why, don't we?
Always.
We always ask the question. The thing is, we first of all say thank you for letting us know, and then we want to say why.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of the say why, hey, you had something from the ministry, didn't you? So you basically sent some information, and they basically followed up.
Yeah, I sent them an update because I tried to isolate more where the oil's coming from. That's going into the Welland River because it's still going, right? They're trying to trace it through the sewers, which is a difficult thing, I guess. And there are quite a few companies hooked up to this cauldron, so it would be difficult to find, especially if they only do it at a specific time. Then you got to figure out. Then you got to figure out what time they do that at, right? And then hopefully catch them in the act. Or if it's just part of their process and they're doing something by accident, right?
Yeah.
Either way.
I'd like to think it's an accident, but
always try to think it's an accident and hope for the best, because you don't want to hope that people are being malicious and just dumping, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm hoping that is the case, And
our feeling is that they thought it's going to the wastewater treatment plant and they're dumping it in the wrong sewer, maybe. Just a thought.
Okay, here's a question for you, Mike, from our friend Gary, Mr. AKA well, whatever he is. The question for Mike is, if the region says they're using contaminated soil behind First Avenue, why would they be spraying it with grass seed?
That's a good question. They made a great big berm behind your house, Peter? And that was with the heavy metals they dug up from First Avenue and Bridge Street that were filled with gasoline. And they said they were going to use that soil in the process of reconstructing the whole area. And now they're spraying it with grass seed. So I don't know, Gary. I don't even know why they'd reuse contaminated soil in the first place. But
well, that mound isn't. It's got to be further away. I don't see the mound.
Yeah, it's right. Where the old railroad track is behind your house there. Down further by First Avenue, they put mounds, and first they were small mounds with heavy contamination signs on them. They put it into one big mound like a berm, and now they're spraying it with grass seed. It's right under you could go over the Victoria Avenue Bridge and look down and see where they're doing it.
Oh, you mean right underneath there? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Good question, Gary. I don't know. I have no idea what the idea is there. Like you said yesterday, out of sight, out of mind.
I think that might well be the case. Hey, you spray, you spray it with grass seed stuff, and hey, so who cares that you've got 3-leaf grass instead of 2-leaf grass?
That stuff will grow on anything, eh? That green stuff they spray. That's unbelievable.
Well, actually, the interesting thing is about that is that I was thinking, what the heck are they spraying? Until I did some investigation in it, and apparently, even if they're spraying in 35-degree heat, this is designed so that it will, so there's enough nutrients, etc., in the grass seed, and it will in fact cause them to grow at a certain temperature.
Yeah, that stuff's crazy, eh?
Yeah. Which basically means they just go spray this area in green and then leave, in the middle of the summer.
They just finished doing the regional housing with it. And when it rained, it all washed over the sidewalk and stuff. And we were all like, what is this stuff, right? But the grass is growing very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't see those mounds from where I am, but I get what you're saying.
It's a very strange situation, because in Ontario they're taking contaminated soil and putting it on contaminated sites. And if they know a site is
what gets me about this, so they've got some looks like some form of trap around it to stop water runoff, or to limit water runoff.
Well, there's going to be a lot of water runoff.
Yeah,
because the water naturally runs off that property into 3 natural ravines that once you start construction, you're going to be messing with that, right?
There was a period of time, by the way, whereby trucks were running from, and I followed them as far as St. Catharines. They were running somewhere up the highway further west than St. Catharines, but they were bringing dirt back to the CM property. They were either going in the roadway between the by the side of the helicopters, or the roadway, the CN property. And now that CN property is actually locked most of the time. They've actually put a barrier across it. They put concrete blocks across it, and so those trucks are not getting in there anymore.
Yeah, I said that to Gary before, that something's going on there, because I seen all those trucks too, and there were a lot of them.
Yeah,
and they were, and I don't know where they were.
They were like from about probably about 7:30 till about 3 or 4, and they were sometimes like 8 at a time down on the highway, on the road.
Yeah, and I said that to Gary. We gotta go for a walk and see what they were up to, because they're filling in something and they're using a lot of soil doing it.
Yeah, and my assumption was that it was something to do, because at the same time there happened to be track works going on at the corner of Whirlpool and Stanley.
Were they tearing up tracks or working on it?
No, they were basically, it looks as if what they're doing there is they are laying the foundation for a third track to go through that lights. Because when they put up a new signal light, they actually had 3 lights on it.
Okay.
Right, and it makes sense, because I've been wondering for some time. I used the go train one time to go into Toronto, and I was like held up for an hour coming out of Niagara Falls. Before we even got to the canal, we were an hour late. Right?
Really?
Yeah. And I wonder what happened is that maybe and this would have been midwinter, so this was like a February meeting that I had, and I was wondering whether what happened was they basically needed a second set of tracks in order to have the ability for passenger trains to overtake goods trains. I was thinking they were looking at doing that. The other thing is that there's now some works going on opposite. Do you know where on Whirlpool Lane, opposite where Churches Street meets there? There's a company in there that have put up offices and what looks like potential some makeshift accommodation for workers. Not that I've seen anybody actually doing much there, but they've chopped a whole load of trees down in that section.
Right. Well, they only have 2 ways in by rail, right? And if they want to increase the GO train and have it coming here more and all those things, they're going to have to do something, because it used to be a very busy rail yard, right? Yeah. Because of the industry, it was a hugely used rail line. And then they stopped using it and tore up a lot of the tracks. So I guess they have to rebuild and redo areas to have different ways in and like a different line for the people mover system, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, that makes sense. We were talking about the European and East Asian train transit systems that they've got. In China, they're running a train. It has an hour's journey, but they're running this train at like 700 kilometers an hour. It's pretty damn fast, or I think 600 and something kilometers an hour. Pretty damn fast, but it's running from the airport of this city to the main city center itself. And at certain stages in that run, it's incredibly fast.
Yeah, I imagine.
Right? But that has to have dedicated track.
Imagine going from Toronto to here, 15 minutes or less.
Yeah. Well, that would be, I wouldn't necessarily expect any, you could, if you could increase the speed from here to Toronto to, let's say, 150 miles an hour top speed, right, you'd get to Toronto pretty quickly. But if you could get that, coast to coast railway working and have on there essentially, speed in at certain points of upwards of 300 miles an hour, that would be nice.
Yeah, I believe it's needed in Canada. We got to upgrade and we got to change things and create work too, right? You go east to west with that, and that would create a lot of work. So
yeah, exactly.
And I think it's a good use of direct energy that's done from wind and solar that you have to use up. You have to use that power up. You can't. They don't have a way to store it right now.
Well, that actually is something bothersome, because I've looked at doing. I've looked at wind and solar for kind of my own home, and the research I did, I could actually battery pack my own home with replaceable batteries that would allow me to essentially run power, run power even if there's a power cut.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be done, but they don't want it that way, because then you will become your own generating station, right?
I don't, in that regard, and only in that regard, hey, if I want to run lights 24/7, I'm going to run those lights 24/7 if I'm generating my own power, right?
For sure. And
I wouldn't do it unless I was generating my own power.
Yeah, and that's, before I had written a statement before about solar and wind and how it was a failing system before, and what they should have done was rent roofs. Roofs off of industry, and rent roofs off of houses, and
more industry than houses, but yeah,
and pay them for the power, right? When you're renting the roof, then you don't have to pay them that extra money for the power that goes right into the grid.
Well,
and you could have rented houses that way too. You know what I mean? North-south houses with roofs. You could do the same thing with that. Instead of saying, you get the solar panels and we pay you for the power, they should be just renting the roof, doing the solar panels themselves, and then putting it right into the grid.
Well, you see, there are companies out there that do that. Basically, you can sign up with a number of companies. We have a client that does this. And basically, your roof is used as you don't pay any money out. My client will install a solar panel on your roof, right? You will collect an income from the power generated off of your roof, and as does the solar panel company, because they don't charge you a penny to put the solar panels up. But of course, those solar panels are expensive.
They're going to have to make a monthly fee. Yeah,
they make a monthly fee out of IESO, the grid, and that works throughout the country. But you see, I've always said there's absolutely no reason why you can't have battery packs in that cycle as well.
Yeah, I agree. That's the way to improve the systems, and that's the way to better you wouldn't need a furnace. You'd have a battery instead, right?
Yeah.
And that would be your heating system, electrical heating system, everything, right? Like,
most likely, yes. If you put all the right connections in place, yeah.
So, unfortunately, they never did it right in the first place, and nobody trusts it anymore, right?
Well, actually, there's a lot of people
system in place before, and it's done on purpose.
I would put a solar system up, right, I would put a solar system up if I could find the right one, but I can't put it on my metal roof.
Right, and cost is very high, and by the time you finish paying off the solar panels, you have to change them again. So it's a tough thing to invest in for just a house owner.
Yeah, and it's actually, that's exactly why people like my client exist, because they make it easy. They ease the burden upon the homeowner, and you earn from it.
Right.
They take a lot of the risk. If you think about it, the company that's putting solar panels on your roof takes a lot of risk, because they've done this calculation about how much each party will earn. But the thing is, if you sell your house,
Right.
you sell your house and you've still got the solar panels on there, and you don't transfer them properly, right? Then
they'd have to come and get the solar panels, and then the roof is damaged.
The reason we're involved is because they can lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a tough one, but it's a good idea.
Yeah. All right. The other thing, of course, is that when it comes to wind power, they've got it massively wrong. Sure, out in the wilds of the country, maybe those tall things work, but in fact, actually, I've read a lot of reports about this, that there are systems that are like 15 to 20 foot high, that actually work much more effectively, and maintenance is just walk up and do it.
Yeah, and you could put a smaller unit that runs better in a lot more places and get a lot more of them, right?
Well, in fact, actually, there's no reason why, for example, down the edge of your farm, down the edge of your farmer's field, you couldn't run a whole stack of these 15-foot high windmills that just basically turn and collect energy, and that energy just simply cycles straight down onto the grid.
Especially if you're on shore,
farming at the same time.
Yeah, especially if you're near a body of water where there's offshore winds constantly. They either go from the land to the sea to the water, or the water to the land, right? And you're constantly getting those offshore winds because of the differences in temperature, and you would create power all the time. They also do a lot of the waves, right? In Scotland and stuff, they're doing wave power.
Well, France was the first place to do waves, but France has primarily given up on the wave technology.
Yeah,
but waves, when you think about it, waves pounding against the the rocks all the time. If you kind of put these mechanisms that basically, when the wave crashes in, it spins the mechanism, which causes the electricity to be gathered, right? That is a system that actually works very well.
Yeah, and what an idea, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter.
Some of them are like this, and they do their power creation this way with the waves as it's going, right? So, but I know they were experimenting with it a lot, and I didn't know if they succeeded.
No, there has been lots of experimentation. The trouble is, I think in France, the nuclear industry took over. Right, put those wind turbines at City Hall. A ton of hot air coming from that building. Watch the council. If you watch the council meeting, yep, we get you, Gary. We get you.
100%.
And they should be mandatory on all government buildings. because especially
all the hot air they blow.
The question here is, you could then prove that bullshit, that you could turn bullshit into energy, couldn't you?
A great idea.
Right. Okay. So moving on. Toronto. Some newcomers are paying up to 12 months rent in order to secure housing. This is not just newcomers. This is a lot of people doing this. Basically, what is happening is, in order to get a place, what is happening is a lot of people we're seeing this all the time. A lot of people are coming, they can't find they don't have the rent, so they're paying a year's worth up front in order to secure the property that they want. All right, and it's the only way. A lot of time, it's not that the landlords are saying that you must, but the landlords are saying, for example, there's a couple of tricks out there that landlords are doing. For example, what they're doing is, you've got first and last. It's traditionally what we pay, right? So
Right.
There's the first month that you pay before you move in, and there's the last month you pay, which the landlord keeps and is supposed to collect, supposed to add interest on it, because they're supposed to put it in an interest-bearing account, and they're supposed to pay you interest, right?
Yeah.
And the interest that they pay you is supposed to be equivalent to the percentage. For example, the last month's rent, if it's $1,000 and it's 2%, they're supposed to pay you the $20 type thing.
Right.
If there was a 22% uplift. So that's what's supposed to happen. The trouble is, there's been all manners, and it's not just Toronto, there's been all manners of landlords everywhere who are demanding extra cash. Well, a key deposit, for example, if it's $50, $100, it's perfectly acceptable because, hey, keys cost money to replace, right?
Right.
And most of the time, note there, it's deposit. You're supposed to get the money back at the end of the term once you've finished, right?
Yes.
So,
but reading this article and the apartments they're talking about in this article, it's a 1-bedroom, 1-room apartment.
Yeah.
So these are slumlords,
Yeah.
These are guys in Toronto that are renting out a 1-room thing in the basement, and they're being that picky, right?
Yeah.
So that's a pretty harsh world, especially for all the new coming people into this country, and now they're being blackmailed into doing a full year's worth of rent, and now they're stuck where they're renting for the full year, no matter what.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's not a good situation to be in.
Well, the example they use, this couple handed over $28,300 to prove their reliability to the landlords and secure a home.
And that's their life savings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's a gamble.
That's a real gamble, especially if a landlord turns around and says, 3 months in, and says, hey, I want the place for myself. Bye-bye.
Yeah, it's
most of the, especially if you've got an unscrupulous landlord, and again, like you were saying about people and spills and things like that, most landlords are decent people, even corporate landlords, right? In the region, 90% of all properties in Ontario are run by corporate landlords, but like 80% of all landlords own less than 5 properties.
Right.
So those corporate landlords are kind of are only like 1 or 2% of all properties. So the vast majority of landlords own less than 10 properties overall. It's something like 90%, 95% of all landlords own less than 10 properties. And
yes.
not mega property owners.
But are those corporate landlords part of our housing cost problems?
Well, that actually is. There are many issues about corporate landlords. One of the questions is that there's a couple of landlords around here where we've been fighting multiple times because they just don't seem to care about cockroaches and bed bugs and things like that, and their buildings are infested with them.
Right. I could see huge problems with stuff like that. But if a normal person like you or I are bidding against a corporation on a house, are we going to win?
Oh, no. You're not bidding against a corporation. You're bidding against a corporation. But if you're bidding against somebody who's paying a year's rent up front, of course you're not going to win, right?
Yeah.
And the typical thing, though, is, hey, they're concentrating on, I think these people came from, where did they come from? Ecuador, right? So they're immigrants from Ecuador, and they're basically, I think what they're finding initially is, well, you're an immigrant, you've got no job right now because you're looking for one. And probably the reason you can't get a job is because you don't have a permanent address. And the reason you don't have a permanent address is because you don't have a job right now. An endless stupid cycle. And of course, that the only way to break that cycle is to put money into a massive upfront payment. There's a lot of people doing it, though. I think it's probably the best way to secure a rental property if you needed one.
Yeah, but what pressure?
Yeah. Oh, I know.
And that goes both ways. Even the landlord's taking a risk because a 1-year lease like that is not a guarantee that they're going to be great tenants either, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They come in with 40 people and say, "This is my family. We're all moving in."
one bedroom apartment. Yeah, that's going to help you a great deal, isn't it?
That's it's like the house across the street from me. There's, I don't know how many people living in the house. Many people, right? And it's almost like their shift work is the way they live. You know what I mean? They're taking turns sleeping in the house.
Well,
everything is.
Yeah, there are some people like that. There are some places, and if you think about it, back in well, we go back to Whitechapel in the 1880s, where the infamous Ripper murders took place. One of the typical things that would happen, but back there, is you'd rent a room by the day.
Right.
If you didn't have the rent for tonight, by the time you came home, right, you weren't staying there.
Right. That's pretty well, short-term rentals, right?
That's as short as you get. Yeah.
But what a scary world when you have to get down to that so landlords can make money and people could live.
But then again, definitely landlords back in 150 years ago were definitely the scum of the earth compared to many that we got today. And again, like you said, in relation to these kind of industrial accidents, I think most landlords don't want to be seen as as the scum of the earth. They want to be good landlords. They want to have good tenants, and they want to provide a service. A service and give value.
Yeah, and it would be really hard to have a building and then someone brings in bed bugs, and then your whole building has to be fumigated.
Actually, let's kill that rumor on the head. Nobody brings in bed bugs. The bed bugs are probably already there. And the challenge with bed bugs is that, in fact, actually, it's the environment that breeds them.
Yeah, but I've had people visit Toronto and bring them back in their clothing.
That does happen. That's for sure.
That's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
So I know houses that this has happened in, right?
Yeah.
And,
which is the one bed bug problem that I was fighting a landlord over. And essentially, this particular landlord, what happened is they'd come and spray 801. They wouldn't go. But in order to spray 801, they'd send the tenant from 801 had to leave for the day. So what would happen is he would pick his stuff up, and maybe he'd go into 802, right, to see his friend in 802 or 803 or 804, right? And of course, he's carrying those bed bugs on his trouser cuffs, right, or on his sneakers, etc. And he's spreading them to that particular area. What should happen with bed bugs is you spray the whole frigging, you move everybody out and you spray everything.
Yeah, Yeah, you got to do it all.
Yeah. And it's the same with cockroaches are easier to kill, but if you don't take action against cockroaches, boy, are they going to hurt you.
It's a very challenging thing, yes.
Right. And at the end of the day, that's the problem that we've got.
Yeah, and it becomes a big one for somebody living in a building, right?
Yeah. And the bed bugs, but basically bed bugs, rats, and cockroaches basically crawl through, get through, through everything. They can come out these little holes that you can't even see.
Yeah, they infest small places that we can't imagine. We don't know what's behind the boards on your housing, right? We don't look behind there. They live in a different world than we do, and we kind of out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Out of sight, out of mind. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And that's one of the things that, I guess we do that, but we do need to, and the challenge of that is these are only the worst of landlords, because good landlords do the right thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But you do have your slumlords. You got people, you got some landlords that are not rich, right? They don't have a huge amount of money. Those are the slumlords, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about legality of this. They're saying basically it's not technically, this is a quote from the article. This is not me speaking. It's not technically illegal, but lawyers and housing experts say this unregulated grey zone leaves many newcomers as well as other would-be renters vulnerable to exploitation. That is true. It actually is illegal, right? It is not legal for you to pay anything more than your first and your last and a key rental. That is it. That is all that the law permits you to pay. You can go to the board, and this is where things get awkward. You can go to the board and you can make an application for a T1. You can make a T1 application, which is for a tenant overpayment of rent, right? And where you can ask for your rent back. However, if what you're doing is you paid a year's worth of rent up front and you're basically now living free for the first year, if you paid a year's worth of rent up front and you're paying, so you paid your year, your 2,000 a month for the year, and you paid that all up front, and then you continue to pay 2,000 each month, then this may apply to you, right? But if you're paying your 2,000 up front and you're not paying rent in the meantime, then this wouldn't apply to you, right? Because the T1 application is for an overpayment, right? So is my landlord charged me an illegal rent which I have paid? That is the condition which would apply here. So you would make an application, and I would suggest that instead of using you have to use the form that the landlord and tenant board provide you, but I suggest that you add extra pages, because, for example, if you paid a year's worth of rent up front, there's not enough room on the form to actually put a year's worth of rent that you paid up front, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can put the rent amount is like 28,000 or whatever it is from the first time you moved in to the last date that your rental agreement ends, in order to get that back. But the other thing to consider is these applications could take as much as 2 years.
Yeah, that's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
They're already stuck, and then they got to take longer.
Yeah. Well, and you see, the thing is about this is the type of application which is classed as, and if you think about it, there's a logic to it. This is the type of application that is classed as Yes, the money has been paid. There's probably no dispute, even by the landlord, that the money has been paid. But there are way more important things for the LTB to do, like evict non-payers.
Yeah.
Than this, right?
Yes.
And that's where the logic goes, because in fact, the vast amount of pressure that has been on the landlord and tenant board is get those non-payers out. And basically, that's where the quickest hearings go, is where there's, where you need to evict non-payers, right? And that's as it should be. Although it should be a lot quicker than it is. You should be able to get a hearing within a month to 6 weeks, really, on that one.
So when you were talking about people that are immigrants or people just coming into the country and they're stuck in this position, this could become diabolical, right?
It could, yeah.
The people could be in real trouble living under a landlord's roof for a year and having no money to do anything else for food or anything. This could turn into something very bad, and I don't like the smell of it. Actually, I don't. We're trusting too much, right?
I don't like the smell of it, but then again, hey, there's a link in this article that says he can't afford to rent an apartment, so he quickly sleeps in the office. Right?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's happening a lot too, right?
I've never seen it myself, but I have heard about it. A friend of mine, basically, they used to. What would happen at the office is George was the last person out, but George was also first in the office in the morning, right? And it wasn't until, but George was always clean, tidy, well shaven, etc. But it wasn't until sometime later that somebody came in an emergency at like 4 o'clock in the morning, because they had to get something ready for 6 o'clock, because this new software was going live at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they suddenly woke up in sheer panic at 2 in the morning that I haven't done whatever it was, right?
Nah.
And if I don't fix this, but when they're up at 6 o'clock, when they start work at 6 in the morning, this whole system's going to go crazy, right? So the guy gets up, to do that, and he finds George in the office.
Morning, George.
And George is there. George is kind of, as the lights come on, he's kind of, what the fuck is going on? And still in his pajamas, right?
So was he in limbo for a couple months and just staying in the office for that time until he found a place, or was he doing this for a while?
In that particular case, he was, but it didn't end well.
Right.
Right. It did not end well because he was fired.
Sure.
Right. Because the point being is, and he was fired, not with cause, but without cause. And essentially, they considered it a security risk.
Right. For sure. He's on property when he's not supposed to be, right? So
yeah. And it is a security risk.
Yes.
Right? So yeah, you can be fired for that. Absolutely, you can.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But again, yes, it doesn't alleviate the situation that we have such a dire system right now, that we've got so many people that are homeless.
Make sure he wears really old running shoes.
Yeah, it's very scary.
Yeah.
Very scary that nobody's doing anything about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the city council and the region declaring a state of emergency, and there's been absolutely nothing done.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And absolutely. The whole point, it's the reason why the city and the region declares a state of emergency is really to basically highlight the problem to the province and to the feds, to say that, hey, guys, we've got a real big problem here. You need to do something about it, because the solution must come from the province or the feds.
Yeah, but when the city itself has done detached homes for every speck of land in Niagara Falls, where are we going to do it?
Well, it's okay. Your detached home can now be subdivided into a duplex, and you can put a granny flat. You can put a tiny home in the garden.
Yeah, and then somebody could pay a year's rent on it.
Damn, you got my evil evil. You connected my evil plan. Damn you.
But it is a tragedy, and we're watching it unfold, and it's a frightening thing to watch. And then even right now, you got this other article up here about E. coli in the water. That's another frightening thing to watch, right?
Oh yeah.
It's been happening like crazy. Nobody's doing anything about it. We still got floaters going down the Welland River all the time from the wastewater treatment plant there. So nobody ever does anything about the E. coli going into the system.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about exactly that, because that is a big problem. E. coli coming out. Yeah, that really is something you kind of need to be worried about, don't you? There's basically
8 beaches in the region had a no swim recommendation last week.
Yeah. So this is basically the region. This is not our region. This is Southwest Ontario. Huron Public Health has recommended to avoid swimming in 6 beaches in the area, while Southwestern Public Health advises people to stay clear of 2 beaches. So this is Windsor-Sarnia area.
Yeah, but not too far away. And don't worry, as the water heats up, these bodies of water will be at our beaches in no time, right?
Well, I was going to say, you're talking about Lake Huron or Lake Erie, right?
Yes.
In there. We've got beaches on Lake Erie in our region.
Yeah, and a lot of them are the same way. That's why I like to have my own swimming pool, my own backyard, keep it clean, and you're not swimming in any feces.
Well, if you are, it's your own.
Yeah, it's very scary. I don't know if the more wastewater treatment plants we're adding, it doesn't seem to be helping. I don't think it's all just wastewater. A lot of the blue algae is caused from everything the farmers are using to what SciTech produces, right? So you get blue E. coli and bacteria, and I think it's a combination, right? But to have an open cut and then say, let's go to the beach, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah. And well, in fact, actually, I always thought it crazy. There was a place, they did this report, and it was on a popular beach. I think it was in California. There's a beach where everybody went in California, and basically what happened is they put this outflow pipe that went kind of like about half a mile off the beach and dumped industrial effluent half a mile off the beach. And I'm thinking to myself, this is one of the biggest beaches I forget which one it was, but one of the most popular beaches in the world, because there are songs about this damn place, right? And you're dumping a half mile offshore. Well, that isn't going to help anybody, because where do you think that's going to come? The dumping is going to come straight back onshore, isn't it?
Yeah, the waves are going to push it right there. That doesn't seem far enough out to me. And
well, even if you put it 20 miles out, it still wouldn't be far. It still. I was
just going to say again, why would you put it there untreated anyways? That just doesn't make sense, because it's always going to come back.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
We got to improve the systems. I mean, wastewater treatment plants still rely just on gravity to do all the work, right? And when there's rains, we know there's overflows and mixtures that happen, and those things are never addressed and never fixed. We got a great big wastewater treatment plant that's going to go just in the Welland River here, And that's going to take care of not only parts of Niagara, but all the new housing in Thorold and stuff like that. It's going to do South Niagara. It's not just for our area. And it's going to be huge. And that's going to cause some big problems in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the problem. We don't have upgrades on the way we treat our waste. And whenever there's rain overflow, which we seem to be having a lot more of because we're taking away all the wetlands. Have you noticed all the flooding incidents that are happening, Peter? Little cities, big cities.
Interesting. They were talking about a flood on the radio this morning when I woke up. They were talking
Don
about
Valley Parkway.
Yeah, DVP. Yeah. And there's people walking away, leaving their car with the hoods up. Well, actually, your car's good as done when you've got a flood, right? That's an insurance write-off.
Yeah. And this is going to happen more often as you know, we've had a lot of fires that taken away trees. We've had a lot of trees cut down for development. And then we've had a lot of wetlands taken away because of development. And this is what's going to happen. The water's got to go somewhere. And those trees and those wetlands used to be the place that would take care of that. And we pretend that we could make a little ditch and the water's going to be transferred over there. But when we have when you have 1 week of rain, 1 full week of rain, we're going to be in a lot of trouble in a lot of places.
Well, actually, I got a problem with, we leveled out our back garden, and now when it rains, we unfortunately get pooling in one end of it.
Right.
So it's reasonably level, but it's obviously slopes towards one direction, and it ends up pouring into one corner and flooding that corner.
Oh, you have your own homemade pond.
Yeah, which of course, whilst it's flooded, you can't do a thing in it, right? But once it's unflooded, you can't figure out how to get rid of this water. I thought about you know, and there's no drainage, of course, in your garden, right?
Yes, yeah, and that's just a small example of what we're talking about, right, Pete? How it's overlooked of where the water goes and how the water is used up. And the price we're going to pay is major flooding. I heard Niagara on the Lake, all the streams and stuff were very close to overflowing, if not overflowing. And lower places like St. Catharines and Niagara on the Lake, where any place really where poor development's going to be done, we're going to pay the price for it with flooding.
Yeah, and well, the thing about flooding, of course, is somewhere like St. Catharines, where it's lower up towards the lake. Of course, if you get, typically what will happen is the system will control itself. But if there's a large run through the Great Lakes, and Lake Ontario gets more water than it should do, of course, it's going to eat into the shores of Niagara on the Lake and St. Catharines and the like. Up here, we're at least 250 foot above that shit.
Still going to have water problems in certain areas, I guarantee you.
Yeah. Well, Valleyway, for example.
Huge, yeah. Yeah, they still got the muddy run that goes underneath there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That waterway starts on Acres property, eh?
Yeah.
It starts on Acres property and runs all the way down there. And I know people that have lived on Valleyway that have problems with their basements ever since they've had the house, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's a big problem, especially if we're going to have a lot of these sudden rains like we have. It seems to be happening more often.
We've had a wet summer, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's cloudy every day, right? Like we get peaks of sun. Wow, it gets really hot, but as long as it's cloudy, that heat's kind of, staying away. And a lot of rain, a lot of downpours. Yeah. And people in Niagara on the Lake have been telling me especially that they're noticing high water levels higher than normal. And it's
why is the wastewater plant going to cause problems?
because every time it rains, wastewater treatment plants and the sewage get mixed together, and then you get waste going into the waterways. And right now, the little wastewater treatment plant at the top of the Welland River lets out floaters all the time. They call it floaters, which is, people's crap, right? It lets it out all the time. And that's just a small wastewater treatment plant.
The wetlands that are built on is, for example, the Thundering Waters development and the pressure to build stuff on the Welland River that basically it doesn't have the capacity to take anything else. Right. Another sad drowning in the creek this weekend. Right.
Good for you, old man.
Yeah.
Well, I've been posing that question too, as they want to put high density housing along the Welland River and Lions Creek. They got to do a risk assessment of how many kids are going to drown a year, because it's going to be shocking. Just last summer, City Council was talking about drownings at the Welland River and how to address it. It's going to exponentially increase as you're putting high density housing neighborhoods all along the Welland River and Lions Creek. It's going to be a dangerous thing.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Okay. So one more thing, which we didn't get to. So there's this national recall for certain drinks. So these are the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has issued a massive recall on certain types of beverages due to an investigation in cases of listeriosis, linked to the affected products is impacting several grocery stores in Canada. Various Silk and Great Value brands based in refrigerated beverages are being recalled due to a possible Listeria monocytogenesis contamination.
Very scary. Quietly done, they quietly warn people slowly but surely instead of putting a big warning out there, right?
Yeah.
I guess there are a lot of these drinks. Almond drink. What other thing?
They actually haven't listed it. This is part of the problem.
Well, there was an almond drink. The stuff you make with coffee for tea and coffee for different flavors and stuff like that. They were all found with it, and they didn't expect it in these things, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you see, well, actually, the thing is, almond drinks and that sort of thing do go off, right? Almond milk goes off, right?
Yes.
You can get mold. It can go moldy, all right? Yeah. It just doesn't go off the same way as milk does.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And I don't know why it was so quiet, and it's still quiet. This article doesn't even name the things that are pulled off the shelf, right?
This is the problem.
Quietly being done.
Yeah, this is the problem that I have. This is an article that came into Inside Hamilton, right? And there's not a listing of what the things are. They're talking about companies like Frederick Gouchard, president of Danone Canada, saying we're deeply concerned about these reports. We're taking this matter extremely seriously. We continue to focus our immediate efforts on protecting our customers with care through this swift recall and conducting a thorough investigation with our third-party manufacturer. Now, the question here is, yeah, great. And I'm sure they will get to the bottom of how it happened, but I don't know whether the Silk milk product that I've got in my fridge is part of the recall.
That's a scary thing, eh?
Yeah.
I dumped mine. It was what's that stuff called? It was like a coffee mate for and we use it in tea just once in a while, but we dumped ours. I mean, I'm not taking any risks when they're being so hush hush about it, right?
Well, the other thing about this is normally, okay, so what they're talking about here on that almond milk and coconut unsweetened, they're talking about all best before dates up to and including 24 OC04. So 24th of October, basically. October 4th, 2024 is your best before dates.
Right.
Right.
So I just dump it. I do the safe thing and just dump it because they're being so quiet about it. It makes you nervous, right?
Yeah. And they're saying, there's information about product codes, etc. here, but there's not really enough information here.
Yeah. And I even seen a news article on it last week, and it was very vague and very quick and not repeated. Yeah. So I don't understand that.
Well, this is actually a problem. I think there are some places that we need to have, especially now we've got the internet, right? And again, exactly as you say, let's assume first of all that none of this was done deliberately, right? Things happen. It's an accident. Let's assume that is the case. So whether it's done deliberately or done accidentally, the same issue needs to be. What you need is a website that will basically allow you to go look up any product you've got in your fridge, look up the batch number, look up the the best before date, etc., and then whether that product is under a potential recall. If there was a constantly well-known website out there,
hard thing to update though, eh?
Well, you would rely upon is public health, and you'd rely upon the goodwill of public health officials and on the companies themselves, because the companies don't want to get a bad reputation. The companies want to be seen as dealing with it.
You know what? I'd rather a company come out and say we made a mistake, we got to pull this, than a company being hush hush about it, right?
Yeah.
And I give kudos. I give kudos to companies that come out and do that, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I would trust you if you said, if your company said, hey, we're, even if it's their top selling brand, right? Sorry, but we fucked up. On our top selling brand, we need to issue a recall, take it back to the store, and we'll give you a price match recall, even if you don't have a receipt, and the store will return this product to us at no cost to you. You know what? I'm walking in that store. I'm buying that product next time I'm looking.
Yes. Yeah. And instead of being hush hush and worrying about your reputation's going to grow by being honest.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Right.
Yeah.
And, no matter how this comes about, whether it's a public health inspector that finds this, or it's the company that finds it, just be honest.
Yes. Yeah. And like you said, I would happily buy a product from that company again.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. And I think we have to call it quits at this point.
Yes, sir. We're gone over the time again.
We always do. And we got some stuff to continue up on tomorrow. We got a few things. We got a few things to cover tomorrow. All right, as well. So thanks everybody for being here. And Mike, thank you for filling in for Dave. You're doing a fantastic job.
My pleasure. And have a good day, Niagara.
All right. Bye.